Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's FPC Radio Live. It is January the 2nd, 2023. That's right. I put up 2, but I really meant 3. I'm still adjusting to the new year. But yeah, it's here we are in our, I believe, when we first started, or I first started doing the show, it was 2019, 2020. So yeah, it's just another calendar year for FPC Radio Live. But John, we turned back the clock a little bit yesterday and saw what I think is the biggest fear of most NFL teams, and that is Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers at their peak heading into the playoffs. And I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you, especially your guy. I mean, he was spectacular yesterday. 432, 3 touchdowns. I mean, he really turned back the clock. My guy, he's kind of along for the ride. He's not turning the ball over. He's showing great leadership, which I think has to be talked about. But Green Bay's won 4 in a row and now are in position to win and get in next week. Their defense has stepped up. They're creating turnovers. And, oh, my Lord, the special teams actually contributed yesterday, which is a good thing for them. So here they are, maybe going to sneak in as the 7th seed. And, sure, you look at the NFC, you go into the postseason, the 2 best quarterbacks will be Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. I mean, Brady's already qualified for the playoffs, and if Rodgers gets in, they're clearly the 2 guys you trust the most over. We both like Jalen Hurts, but he's only played in 1 playoff game in his career, and he's banged up, to say the least. Dak Prescott not played well in the postseason. Kirk Cousins, once again yesterday, it's kind of a primetime game, starts turning the ball over. Brock Purdy is a nice quarterback, but he's a rookie. You just go right down the list that, 2 old guys, even though their teams are only 8-8, their teams seem to be playing better at the right time.
Mm-hmm. And look, and to your point, they're both doing it differently. And I think, and that's not and I'm not using that as a way to downplay what Aaron Rodgers is doing, because to your point, like the leadership and his presence and his ability to make the plays that matter is what's important. And that's what makes him so valuable. And generally that's what older quarterbacks go through as they age. They can't do as much as they used to, but you're still not counting them out, because and honestly, John, it speaks to what's valuable as a quarterback. And all the physical ability is great, but a superior mind is much better if you can at least, if you still have the physical ability in terms of arm strength and accuracy. And clearly both Brady, obviously, and Rodgers still can do that in terms of throwing the ball. So I'll take their brain over any quarterback in the league. And that includes, the second coming in Patrick Mahomes there. And I say that very sarcastically, because I kind of just chuckle at the over-the-top anointing of him, as anyone who listens to the show understands. But yeah, I mean, look, both quarterbacks were phenomenal. Specifically Brady, who just look, he's about, I believe, 7 completions away from tying the most completions in a season that he set last year. He leads the league in pass attempts. He leads the league in completions. I don't know. I didn't pull it up right in front of me, but I'm going to try to right now. But he's top 3 in pass yards this season. The guy's going to come just below 5,000 yards again in back-to-back seasons. It's absurd. And, to think that people thought this guy is washed or think this guy is washed. No, I mean, this team struggled, and there's a lot of blame to go around. He certainly didn't play his best, weeks 1 through 16. I mean, there's certainly some downs there, but the guy is still physically capable. Yeah, he's second. Right now, he's sitting second in the league with 4,600 yards. That's more than Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Kirk Cousins. It's just under Patrick Mahomes, who has by far much more yards after the catch. I mean, if we're going to start comparing those two, then that's where we will start. So it's amazing to me. And again, sometimes we get a little numb to it because, well, this guy's been breaking down the barriers and the standards for elite quarterback play, not only at a young age, but now at a older age for years now. So it's not surprising in that sense, but it's surprising, John, that at 45, his arm is still as good as it I'm not going to say as good as ever, because I think that downplays quite a bit of what 2007 was in the kind of that era of Tom Brady's arm, but it's not far off. I mean, those deep shots to Mike Evans, the third one in particular, I believe was the one where it was the tightest coverage, and it just dropped right in his basket in the end zone. And I mean, all three of those passes were pinpoint accurate. He was decisive. And again, the ball was whipping out. I mean, hell, that one big play. Cade Otton had a tough day yesterday, but he made a really nice play right before that touchdown grab, where Tom Brady threw a bullet, which that ball might have kept going through the back of the end zone, through the stands, if no one caught that, because it was thrown so hard. It's just, again, it's incredible each and every week to watch this guy do what he does. And like I said, all of a sudden you have 1 week left in the regular season, and your confidence in Minnesota is clearly shaken. If there was ever a team that all season we've always questioned how far Minnesota could go, but I feel like the last few weeks we kind of started to lean a little bit towards, like, okay, maybe Minnesota is a pretty good team. And then all of a sudden they slap us in the face and say, hey, don't forget about how much we screw things up in most cases. So, and I think that's what's happening right now, is like they played bad against Green Bay. And that was a big time opportunity. So, you said it wasn't a primetime game, but it might as well be. 4:30 window against Green Bay at Lambeau Field. That's as close to a primetime game as you're going to get, with an opportunity, John, to sneak ahead, or not sneak ahead, but get right in the mix for the number 1 overall seed. And what did they do? They got absolutely demolished. That's a bad sign.
Yeah, we've seen it this year. We saw it against Dallas. We saw it against Philadelphia. So the teams they've played that are contenders, they've struggled against. Now, they had a monumental win in Buffalo. As much of that was Buffalo handing them that game. Mm. Buffalo should have won that afternoon game up in Buffalo. But yeah, this is a team that's 12-4 and minus 19 in terms of point differential. It almost doesn't make any sense. And I think it'll reverse next year. They'll probably go 7-10 and miss the playoffs, because they're a good team, but they're not a great team. I think in terms of what Green Bay has been able to do over the last 4 games is, first of all, they caught a break in the schedule. And again, those things tend to even out. You have a tough stretch in the middle of the season. Later on, you're playing Chicago, the Rams. Then you go to Miami, and Tua suffers a concussion, and you come back and win that game. And then you got Minnesota, which, has had games this year where they just, kind of puked all over themselves. But the key for Green Bay is they're getting healthier at the right time.
Yeah.
They have the highest paid quarterback, highest paid left tackle, and highest paid cornerback in all of football. The quarterback has shown incredible leadership this year. And I know a lot of people like to make fun of Aaron Rodgers, but he's played through injuries. And when they were 4-8, the talk was, well, let's just shut him down and get ready for next year. And he didn't want to hear anything about that. And he said, no, I'm playing.
I think we even talked about that.
We talked about it. Yeah.
Guilty of that.
Yeah, it was almost like, okay, 4-8, they're not going anywhere. Get them healthy. Let's see what Jordan Love's all about. Well, Rodgers didn't want to give up his position. The great quarterbacks don't. Right? You'd have to pry away the football from Tom Brady more so than anyone. But now David Bakhtiari looked like David Bakhtiari yesterday at left tackle. He hasn't been the same player the last 2 years after suffering a knee injury 2 years ago. And Jair Alexander showed up huge yesterday. And I've always wondered why, if you have an elite cornerback, you don't just match him up against the other team's receiver. Well, they did yesterday, and Justin Jefferson, arguably the best receiver in football, 1 catch for 15 yards. So they're peaking at the right time. They're creating turnovers. Seems to be a good vibe right now. So yeah, even though they're both 8-8, I think people fear the Packers and Tampa at this point, especially if Green Bay can at least sneak into the playoffs. They still have to beat Detroit, which is playing at a high level. But fortunately for the Packers, the game's at Lambeau. Detroit's not the same team in inclement conditions or outdoors. They're a dome team, so advantage Green Bay if they can find a way to win on Sunday. They'll be a handful for someone.
Well, and look, we've been talking about it for the last few weeks that the NFC seems vulnerable, and this was before Minnesota got blown out. This was before, and this was with the assumption that Jalen Hurts was eventually going to be healthy and the Eagles will be fine. Well, the Eagles did not look like the Eagles yesterday against the Saints, and obviously, it's not a coincidence that you lose 1 game and 14 opportunities with Jalen Hurts, and then in 2 games you lose. Like this is, again, why I push for, and I think it's silly to dismiss wins as a quarterback stat. No, quarterbacks are as instrumental in wins and losses as you can get for any individual player. And it doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean that every, quarterback who has a bad game is going to lose and every quarterback who has a great game is going to win. But this is a great example of how different this team is, because people are like, oh, well, Jalen Hurts only, a lot of this is coming from Chiefs fans because obviously they were threatened. They felt threatened. Mahomes' MVP candidacy was threatened by Jalen Hurts, and rightfully so, because they were like, oh, well, he's only throwing 20 something. You're ignoring an entire aspect of what he does on the field, and it's running, it's the rushing touchdowns, and it's everything that branches off of that and how defenses play the Eagles. And we've seen it the last couple weeks. Yeah, Gardner Minshew is perfectly capable of putting up a lot of great stats, but in crunch time, what did he do? He threw an interception. What happened this week? Well, he was mediocre at his very best, and that wasn't that long. So we looked at the NFC and said, okay, there's going to be opportunity there if these guys can get into the playoffs. And that opportunity seems more ripe now than it was even a week ago, because now we've seen Minnesota get absolutely blown out of the water by Green Bay. We've seen Philadelphia come back to earth and not look like that juggernaut team that we've seen all year. Now, again, San Francisco is still kind of a looming threat. But outside of that, I mean, there's no one in this league or in this conference you're going to trust more than Brady and Rodgers. And I think there's a massive gap from Rodgers to the third person on that list. You know what I mean? And then it just goes from there. So the opportunity is there. And if you're Tampa, especially, you're already in the playoffs and you're going to get a home game and you're going to play a team that, does anyone believe in the Cowboys?
No, even Cowboy fans, or at least Skip Bayless. Although Skip Bayless thinks they're going to the NFC Championship game, and of course he's been saying that for 27 years and been proven wrong. But yeah, look, they had an exhibition game on Thursday against Tennessee. They were resting guys. Tennessee was resting people. Dallas could still win the division if they win on Sunday against Washington, and if the Giants upset Philly. But I would think the Giants, who are locked in as the 6th seed, are going to rest people to get ready for their first round matchup. So Philadelphia should be able to beat the Giants, who may be resting people on Sunday to clinch the number 1 overall seed and obviously the division. So yeah, I mean, I'm about 99% sure we're going to see Dallas at Tampa on Wild Card Weekend, and I'll take Tom Brady over those guys.
Well, and biggest concern for me with Dallas is the quarterback play, because you're not getting elite level quarterback play from Dak Prescott. So the record looks nice, and you're going to be sitting there saying, like, the discussion's going to be like, oh my God, a 12-4, a 13-4, a 12-5 Dallas team is going to Tampa, who's 9-8 or whatever. Well, again, you're going to sit there and have me check boxes. Well, the biggest check is going to go next to the quarterback position. And that's going to be in favor of the Buccaneers. So I'm sitting here thinking, like, man, if they we've been saying it for 17 weeks, if the Buccaneers can just put together a relatively great game. And look, I mean, they had to come back twice. They were down 14-0. They were down 11 in the fourth quarter, and another comeback win for this team. But the most important thing was, I think, from start to finish, they did a lot of good things on offense. Unfortunately, that turnover early, like I said, the fumble, that, I'm not going to put a lot of blame on. Chris Godwin played great yesterday. That was a really great play by the defender to knock the ball out, the little peanut punch, as they call it. So I'm not gonna kill Chris Godwin for that, but that obviously was part of the reason why they fell down 14-0. But they showed a lot of resiliency, and I think that's the most into it I've seen that entire team from start to finish the entire season, and that's a great sign, because we've been saying it. Who cares what your record is if you get to the playoffs? It doesn't matter. Only one team skips the first weekend. So if you're not the 1 seed, it doesn't matter if you're 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, whatever. You have to beat teams. You have to win 4 games to win the Super Bowl. So that's what's ahead of the Buccaneers right now. So let's shift over a little bit to the AFC, because I do want to talk about the Patriots before. Real quick, we'll mention tonight's huge game between the Bengals, and I really hope that lives up to the hype. I really do, because it could potentially be one of the best games all season. But John, the Patriots, As remarkable and as improbable as it sounds, they win next weekend and they're in the playoffs. And it's kind of bittersweet, John, because I'm excited for the opportunity for this, but it just makes me think about how all the opportunities that they just gave away this season and how much better their record could have been at this moment had they, played just a little bit better on a couple snaps throughout this season. And it puts me in a very I don't know what to think of this team because I think their defense is excellent. I think they're very well coached defensively. Offensively, there's a lot to be left to be desired. But they're starting to make plays more consistently, and I think Mac Jones has played a lot better the last few weeks. So I'm looking at it saying, like, if you're a team in the AFC, like, would you be surprised, John, if say the Patriots I'm not saying they're going to beat them, but say the Patriots end up playing the Chiefs. Would you be surprised if they gave the Chiefs a lot of problems?
I think they could be somewhat competitive against them because Belichick's done a good job against Patrick Mahomes. And also, I agree with you. Their defense is top 10. They create turnovers. They've scored 7 defensive touchdowns this year, which is incredible. Kyle Duggar has 3 defensive touchdowns this year. Do the Patriots have a wide receiver with 3 touchdown receptions this year? I don't think so. So Duggar, maybe they'd have to move him to the other side of the ball to help out a little bit. But I think they would be competitive. Look, the Chiefs are always in these close games. Even yesterday, Denver, which fired their coach. Sometimes you do get a bit of a tick after firing your coach. But, Russell Wilson actually looked decent against Kansas City yesterday. And it was a 27-24 game. We've seen Kansas City week in and week out, not look overly impressive. So, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if it was a 38-10 game either. But I think the Patriots could be competitive there. They just don't match up against Buffalo. That's the team that you look at and go, oh, this is is tough to deal with.
Unfortunately for them, that's who they have to beat next week.
You're in the division with them, right? And also, like, now, what do you do tonight? If Buffalo loses tonight, Kansas City's in the driver's seat for the number 1 seed, and then Kansas City plays Saturday. If they beat the Raiders, they clinch the number 1 seed. So when you take the field against Buffalo won't be playing for all that much, other than the fact that their biggest rivals, the New England Patriots, and Sean McDermott,
they're going to
Bill Belichick and his. Right, and they're going to be playing the next week regardless. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough to win up there, but if they can sneak it out and get into the postseason. But you're so right, Ian. There's a couple of games that you look at and go, man, how did they lose that? I mean, the Chicago was just one of those weird nights where it just didn't work, but Chicago hasn't won a game since. The overtime loss in Green Bay was frustrating from the Patriots side. And then, obviously, what happened in Las Vegas, that should have been a win. So, you'd be looking at, instead of 8-8, 10-6.
Well, even
would already have it clinched for you.
Even last week with the fumble late, you know what I mean?
Sure.
These couple plays here and there. And look, we're not here playing what if because that's not what we're trying to do. I mean, their record is what it is, but it's a fine line for this Patriots team that you're you're in a weird spot because, again, obviously this is the post-Tom Brady era and you're not winning Super Bowls every other year. But this team is still very good, certainly relative to a lot of what we've seen across the league. It's just they're not as good offensively. And again, once again, John, it kind of goes to show you the value of the quarterback. And this is a team that, like, we heard for years, it's like, Tom Brady's always had a top 10 defense. Well, top 10 defense doesn't mean squat if you're not an elite quarterback. And you're guaranteed to have at least 9 top 10 defenses not win a Super Bowl every single year. So, that was always such a foolish argument to make. And this kind of further proves it because, well, the last couple of years, they've had top 10 defenses. And again, this year it's been, dare I say, elite. You say top 10, and I'm like, well, I think it's closer to top 5 than it would be top 10. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like, it's probably closer to 5, 6, 7 range than it would be 8, 9, or 10. So if you think about, man, if you had any of those Patriots offenses under Brady, I mean, this is a 14-3, 15-2 Patriots team easily. It's just one of those chalk it up. Okay, get through the division. Maybe you split with Buffalo, but for the most part, you're going to run the division. they obviously don't have that offensively right now, but they are good enough for the most part offensively to win games. Now they still have their boneheaded moments, and that's always going to be a issue, and that's something that needs to be fixed in the offseason. Because if you can find if you can produce not even a top tier, top three offense, but like an elite offense, like a top 10 offense, you're going to be a threat in the conference, and certainly one that's going to compete with any elite team in that conference. So it's good for the Patriots. Obviously, they still have to get the job done next week, and as we know, they tend to not play two great games back to back. And against Buffalo, it's going to be difficult to keep that momentum going. But the opportunity is there, and you're heading into Week 18 with a chance controlling your own destiny, not even needing help. You just need a win to go to the playoffs. So I think that's very impressive for the Patriots.
And what's even stranger is they could lose and still qualify for the playoffs.
Yeah.
if a few other things go their way, right? I think Tennessee would have to lose, Miami would have to lose, and Pittsburgh would have to lose. And if the Patriots lose, the Patriots get in at 8-9. Ian, there's only 10 teams in the league with a winning record right now, and there's 8 teams. 25% of the league is 8-8.
Yeah,
it's just incredible. I mean, we're coming down to the final week of the season, and you're looking at a team like Green Bay saying, holy crap, if they can sneak in there, they could make a run. Oh, if they don't show up on Sunday, they don't make the playoffs. That type of situation. So that's where we're at.
And it's funny because it's like all season, obviously we spend a lot of time talking about the Patriots, the Packers and the Buccaneers for obvious reasons. And with all the ebbs and flows and ups and downs and this and that, and the Packers are done and the Bucks are this and the Patriots are that, they're all 8-8. It's incredible. They're all 8-8. It's
just different paths there, right? Yeah, all different paths.
Exactly. They've all taken different paths. They all do different things well. You brought it up earlier. I mean, look, the Bucks are Brady or bust. I mean, that's right. Really what it is. You have to run the offense. Like they showed the splits of what the success was for the offense yesterday, and I think Brady was. I think he had a perfect passer rating in the no huddle offense, and they scored 3 points in every other situation the entire game, which again is something we've been literally pounding the desk about since day one. This is how you win football games. You put it on Tom Brady's arm, and you let the other playmakers, the really good playmakers that they have, make plays. Don't, force it. And look, I mean, Leonard Fournette had 10 rushes for 28 yards yesterday. Look, he's not going to be why you win playoff games and win the Super Bowl. It's going to be Tom Brady. Now, just because the Packers do have an elite running game and they do a lot of things that don't necessarily involve Rodgers' arm, it doesn't belittle what he's doing, because what you brought up is almost just as important and what he brings to that football field, and that the confidence, consistency, and leadership, you're not getting that with Jordan Love. You're not getting that with a young quarterback. You're not getting that with a lot of really good quarterbacks. You're getting that with the elite of the elite. And I think that's the value that Aaron Rodgers has put out there. And again, at the end of the day, he's going to make those big plays. Like I said, I pointed to I love that rollout last week to, I believe it was, who caught, was it Tunyon on the sideline, or was it Mercedes Lewis?
Oh no, Mercedes Lewis.
The rollout, and it was just, you've seen Rodgers do that 1,000 times, but again, last week, those are big plays that very few players are going to make, and he does it consistently. Although, again, it's not the 2011 Packers offense, but it's almost just as dangerous. And right now, like I said, going into Week 18, and if they win against the Lions, it doesn't matter because they're all in the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. And the only thing I'm hesitant about as far as them making a deep run is it sure looks like it would be San Francisco in the wild card weekend, which has never been a good matchup. He's 0-4 against them. But you know what? This could be the year that no one expects anything from Green Bay. They sneak in as a 7 seed. San Francisco's won 9 in a row. They'll probably win again next weekend and be the 2 seed. But the only thing about San Francisco is, as good as their defense is, Jarrett Stidham lit them up yesterday. Over 500 yards of offense. I have an idea. So the Raiders are out of the playoffs. So once the season's over, I think the teams that make the playoffs should be able to add one player from the teams that didn't make the playoffs, and I would think Devontae Adams going back to Green Bay for the postseason would certainly help. That would be a big, big help. So that's what I'm going to put.
That catch in the end zone yesterday was
he's special.
I dropped my phone. I was like, you know what? That's that's incredible.
He's the best receiver in football, in my opinion. Yeah,
it's incredible, and he just. It's incredible. I was floored by that. I mean, that was the second most impressive thing that I saw yesterday. The most impressive thing, John, was that punt from the Buccaneers punter who somehow. I mean, look, I saw my life flash before my eyes before that, because I'm sitting here thinking like, oh my God, there's still time on the clock and they have to punt the ball away. This would only make sense for something catastrophic to happen for this Buccaneers team. And no sooner did I think that than the snap just completely just not even get there. But then he picks up the punt and I'm thinking, okay, all right, at least they recovered it and it's not going to be a pick and, scoop and score. And then he somehow punts it and gets it off, which is impressive by itself. But then, John, it's like the most perfectly placed punt inside the 3-yard line. That's like a cross-body throw. This is more impressive than anything that people pump Patrick Mahomes about, okay? Like, forget about these cross-body throws and everything. This was a against-the-grain punt. You're a right-footed punter. You're running hard to your left towards the out-of-bounds, and you somehow kick it in what would you call it? Maybe a 45-degree angle to keep it.
I'd say so. Yeah.
I mean, it was incredible, John. And I mean, it's a shame that the play didn't count because, I think the Buccaneers got a ineligible player downfield penalty, but even getting the re-kick was part of the win for that play, because obviously you're declining that penalty if you're Carolina, if they recover that and somehow stop or tackle the punter at inside Buccaneers territory. Now all of a sudden you have to punt the ball away, and you get not so favorable field position. Two of the most incredible things I've ever seen yesterday. It was outrageous. No, and Joel, no, he didn't kick it with his left foot. He kicked it against, like I said, against the grain almost. Like he's running off to the sidelines to the left, and he somehow kicked his right leg out. It was incredible. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And from a punter, it could have, in theory, saved the Buccaneers season.
Yeah. Oh, it's right out of Australian rules football or something like that. And then it's kind of odd that the one of the biggest plays in the college football world this weekend was Ohio State calling for a fake punt that they executed, which would have iced the game. And just before the snap, Kirby Smart, the head coach of Georgia, called a timeout. So that saved the year for Georgia. So now you got Georgia TCU in the national championship. They're just wild, wild games. It's almost like the golfer that, hits the ball off the tree, it hits the garbage can, it rolls, and it gets to within 2 feet of the pin, and it's like, oh, that's how I planned it.
How about the obviously the most perfect winning shot, and of course most perfect marketing shot ever, the Tiger Woods
oh yeah.
I mean, I every time I see that clip, I just think of the executives sitting at Nike watching that, saying yes, watching the Nike label just slowly reveal itself as it drops into the pin.
How much is that worth?
Oh my God, man, incredible. But all right, so great weekend so far, football. You even mentioned the college football playoff, which was, I mean, if you stayed up, I was reflecting New Year's Eve about where I am in life and everything like that, and I realized as I was sitting down doing financial work that I turned into Ned Flanders from that Simpsons episode where everyone's out celebrating the new year, and I'm at home doing my taxes on January 1st.
That's okay.
I'm being responsible, and it's just a far cry from my life as a 21-year-old versus now. But I was still, but at the time I was sitting here, I was watching the Three Stooges on one TV and I had the playoff games on the other. So very entertaining games that night, very entertaining Sunday. And potentially, John, we have a candidate for game of the year tonight with the Bills and the Bengals facing off with. Look, I don't think there are too many MVP implications. I think if they certainly had the Chiefs, but even if Mahomes had a little bit, less than stellar day, I think it would have opened the door up for whoever won this game to make some noise, just because of we know how voters like narratives and what did you done for me lately? Well, one of the last games we're going to remember is the Bengals Bills showdown. So if this game lives up to the hype and you have two elite performances from two quarterbacks, the winner's probably going to get their name mentioned in this race. But at this point, I think it's going to be tough for them to overcome that. But obviously, the biggest thing here is Buffalo wins, and you can essentially feel pretty comfortable about them having the number one seed, because as much as we hyped up the Patriots earlier, I don't think they're going to win this game against Buffalo next week, which if that's the case, then Buffalo will, assuming they beat the Bengals, will wrap up the number one seed, and Kansas City will either be the second or third seed, likely a second, because I think if the Bengals lose, then there's no way they can move up. I'm not entirely sure of the situation. However, if the Bengals win, John, all of a sudden you have a 3-team race with the Chiefs obviously leading for the number one seed. And really it would just come down to, if the Chiefs lose, then either team, either Buffalo or Bengals winning next week, would clinch the number one seed. So there's a lot going on in this. And you're talking about the team of this season, the biggest hype team, and that's the Bengals, who went to the Super Bowl last year and look more and more each and every week like that team as we head down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about those three teams in the AFC that have kind of separated themselves from the rest of the conference. Although I know before the show we talked about the Chargers could be that weird team that maybe just talented enough to pull off an upset or two. I don't know if they can go ahead and win 3 straight and then end up in the Super Bowl. That might be a little bit too much to ask. But yeah, there's so many implications in this game. The thing is, Kansas City now in their 5th year with Patrick Mahomes. Look, and the Patriots had this happen for nearly 20 years. As great as all those teams are, sometimes you get a little bit of luck go your way. Like something happens away from what you're doing that impacts what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And, we remember the Patriots. Remember Houston needed to win a very winnable game, and they lost, and it allowed the Patriots to be the 2 seed, got a bye, and ended up winning the Super Bowl. I think it was in 2018. I remember the Patriots were 11-5, and they were still the 2 seed because Houston blew a late season game. It kind of helped. The Patriots had nothing to do with that, but it helped. And Kansas City seems to be that team now that sometimes things just kind of bounce their way. I mean, they're good. They're really good. Mahomes is great. They're awesome, but they get a little bit of bounce. And so the lucky thing tonight for Kansas City would be Cincinnati winning, allowing Kansas City to wrap up the first overall seed on Saturday. So, that's what you kind of think. The game's in Cincinnati. Both teams are playing well. I think Buffalo's still slightly better than Cincinnati. Not at the quarterback position. I think that's pretty much a draw. That's going to be a fun thing to watch tonight. But there's so much at stake tonight. This should be the game of the year. ESPN, which pays over $2 billion a year for the right feed, is saying, "Oh, finally, we got something good here."
Well, and here's the thing, though, John. The best case scenario could also turn out to be the worst case scenario for the Chiefs, because if the Bengals do win and then the Chiefs somehow go out and lose to Oakland, which again, Oakland. I do that every single week. I just can't get over.
You're old. Don't worry about it.
Hey,
yeah.
Hey,
talking about Oakland before they went to LA back in like '82.
Yeah.
You're going way back.
Yeah, I'm going to the first iteration of the Oakland
AFL.
Raiders.
Yeah, AFL Raiders. You've been talking to Clark and those guys much too much.
I'm someone asked me who the third greatest wide receiver was of all time, and I said Don Hudson. So it's
you know what? A good answer.
Yeah, look, I think I'm right, but I do think that the older folks are wearing off on me, but that's a good thing. I appreciate the history of this game, unlike a lot of people around here.
How are his numbers back like 75 years ago?
Yeah,
like,
he was
like an alien.
Yeah, he was an alien, and he was the record holder for years. I mean, he was the standard for years, and unfortunately, like I said, I mean, the game's just different now. I mean, I saw it again from an account that I won't mention on here, but just one that just is it's impressive how annoying and frustrating it can be. But posting, Patrick Mahomes has had X amount of games with 100 passer rating, and Peyton Manning and Drew Brees have only had this number, and it's obviously a big gap. And the reason these numbers look impressive is because you're picking a standard, a number standard that is more appropriate for the current time and not the time that you're trying to compare it to. So in 1998, when Peyton Manning was a rookie, the passer rating average was around 77. It's like 98 now. Like, so that's just not an appropriate way to compare it. In the same sense, you look at what Mike Evans is doing, 9 straight seasons of 1,000 yards receiving to start his career. That's 2 seasons short of Jerry Rice's record, which is impressive, no doubt. But the 1,000-yard receiver season is not as unique as it once was. And now that number is, you really catch people's eye when you hit like 13 or 1,400 yards or something like that. That's the new standard, where 1,000 used to be the case. Well, Don Hudson was the standard before. So, but anyways, that's a discussion for the offseason. Here we are talking about receivers that, played before many of us were alive. Not you, but of course.
Ooh.
You've been alive for a while.
I'm not even that old.
I know. I'm just you called me old, so I gotta get you back.
Gotta fight back.
All right. So, anyways, the big game tonight. I'll just ask you before we wrap it up. Who do you got?
This has probably been the toughest game all year for me to pick. I mean, I love Joe Burrow. I love Josh Allen. I've kind of become, I guess, a secret Cincinnati Bengals fan because I like Burrow's personality more than anyone else's. So I really want to pick Cincinnati. But I think on Friday when we discussed this game, I picked Buffalo. So I don't want to go back and forth. I think Buffalo's going to find a way to win. I mean, I think they're the best team of football. So tonight will prove that, and then also set them up to be the first overall seed. So I'll go with Buffalo tonight, but this is going to be a great game.
Yeah, like I agree with you. I picked Buffalo to win, and like I said, I hope it lives up that hype. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. It's going to be a close game, and certainly one that's going to hope that maybe we get this rematch in the AFC Championship game. So, all right, that's going to do it for us here today. We will be back on tomorrow because tomorrow's Tuesday. And we will hopefully be discussing potentially the best game we've seen all season. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Once again, Happy New Year, and we will talk to you soon.